The Apache woman was left unclothed and hit with garbage. Until a cowboy protected her, the sun had begun its slow descent behind the hills, surrounding the small town near the Apache reservation. Its golden light stretched across the streets, painting everything in shades of amber and warmth. But in one particular corner of the town, the beauty of the evening was about to be overshadowed by a moment of cruelty. Maria, a young Apache woman in her mid-twenties, was walking home after a long day at the local diner where she worked. She carried a small bag of groceries, the faint smell of fresh bread and vegetables drifting from it. Her steps were careful but steady. She had walked this route countless times before, yet tonight, something in the air felt tense, almost heavy. The quiet hum of distant traffic and chirping birds seemed normal, but her instincts, honed from years of living in a place where prejudice often lingered just beneath the surface, told her to be alert. As she rounded the corner near the small alleyway, a group of teenagers loitering near the old, shuttered buildings noticed her. At first, she thought nothing of it. They were just kids hanging out after school. But as she drew closer, she felt the weight of their gaze. She slowed down, gripping her bag a little tighter. Her heart began to beat faster, an uneasy rhythm that made her senses sharper. "Hey, look who it is," one of the boys sneered, stepping forward. His words were laced with mockery and his tone sent a shiver down her spine. Maria's mind raced. She knew this wasn't just harmless teasing. She had faced taunts and stares before, whispers that followed her across the streets and into the shops, but something about tonight felt different. Before she could turn around or walk past quickly, another boy grabbed a can from the trash near the alley. He shook it lightly, letting the contents rattle, as if testing the sound it would make when thrown. Maria froze. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but the narrow alley offered little room to escape. Her eyes darted around, searching for help, but the street was empty. "You shouldn't be here," another voice said, sharp and cruel. The boy stepped closer, blocking her path. The other teenagers closed in behind him, forming a semicircle. Maria felt trapped, the shadows of the building stretching over her like looming hands. Panic fluttered in her chest, but she forced herself to take a deep breath. She had to stay calm. Suddenly, the first boy flung the trash can toward her. The contents, old food, paper, and other discarded items, hit her, spilling across her as she tried to dodge. The smell was foul, the mess shocking, and her cheeks burned, not just from the humiliation but from the cold realization that no one was around to stop this. She tried to shield herself, her arms raised, but the attackers laughed, cruel and merciless. Maria's eyes filled with tears, not just from the physical discomfort but from the sting of being treated as less than human. She had always known that being Apache in this town came with challenges, but the public display of hatred, the complete lack of empathy, cut deep. Her mind raced through memories of past incidents, glances that followed her in stores, doors that seemed to close a little faster, whispers that floated in the air like invisible chains. But this was worse. One of the teenagers tried to reach for her bag, attempting to knock it from her hands. Maria twisted and pulled it close, determined not to give them that small victory. She stumbled back slightly, her foot catching on a loose stone, and she almost fell. In that instant, it felt like the world around her had shrunk, leaving only her, the group, and the sense of imminent danger. Her voice trembled as she spoke, a mix of fear and defiance. "Stop, please leave me alone." But her words were swallowed by their laughter. They didn't hear her plea, they didn't want to. They were caught up in the thrill of power, the ease of targeting someone they thought weaker. Maria's mind raced, searching for any way to escape. She remembered the small diner she had just left, the familiar faces of coworkers, the possibility that someone might notice if she ran toward the main street. She took a cautious step, but the teenagers advanced, blocking her path. It felt like every option was closing, and the cold fingers of despair began to wrap around her. In that moment, she felt a strange mix of emotions: fear, anger, humiliation, and disbelief. She had always been proud of her heritage, of the strength and resilience of her people. But right now, she felt small, exposed, and utterly powerless. She wished someone would appear, someone strong and kind, someone who would stand up and make this stop. Then she heard the sound of hooves against the pavement. It was faint at first, but growing louder with each second. She looked up and saw a figure approaching in the distance, a man on horseback. His presence was calm yet commanding, and there was a determination in the way he rode that made her heart lift, even amidst the terror. The teenagers noticed him too, pausing briefly, unsure if they wanted to confront this new figure. The man on the horse, dressed in the simple but rugged attire of a cowboy, didn't hesitate. He guided the horse closer, the animal's hooves striking the ground with a steady rhythm that seemed to announce authority. Maria felt a flicker of hope. Could he help? Would he stop this nightmare? The cowboy dismounted, his boots hitting the ground with deliberate firmness. He positioned himself between Maria and the group of teenagers, looking at them with a calm intensity that seemed to make them shrink back. "Leave her alone," he said, his voice low but firm. There was no anger in it, just certainty and protection. For a moment, the alley was silent except for the soft sounds of the horse moving and the distant wind through the trees. The teenagers exchanged nervous glances. They had not expected anyone to intervene, and certainly not someone who looked so composed and unafraid. Their confidence wavered, and for the first time, Maria saw a chance to breathe without fear. The cowboy took a slow step forward, and the teenagers, sensing the seriousness of the situation, muttered under their breath and finally retreated. One by one, they disappeared into the shadows, leaving only Maria and her unexpected protector. She stood frozen for a moment, unable to speak, overwhelmed by a mix of relief and lingering fear. The cowboy turned to her, offering a reassuring smile. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. His tone was kind, not patronizing. Maria nodded slowly, her voice catching in her throat. I think so," she whispered. The garbage was still on her clothes and her hands trembled, but she felt a warmth in her chest, a small ember of courage returning. He guided her away from the alley and toward the main street, speaking quietly. "You're safe now. Let's get you somewhere you can clean up." Maria followed, feeling a strange sense of gratitude and awe. She had been completely alone moments ago, and now this stranger had appeared, shielding her from harm. As they walked, Maria's thoughts drifted. She thought about her family, about the pride of her heritage, and about how many times she had faced prejudice and fear. Yet, in that instant, she realized something important. Courage and kindness could still exist in the world. Even in moments of cruelty, there were people willing to stand up, willing to protect, willing to make a difference. By the time they reached a safe place where she could clean herself and gather her belongings, Maria's fear had begun to subside. The cowboy waited outside, giving her the space she needed but remaining close enough to offer support. She looked at him, and for the first time since the attack, she felt a sense of calm. "I thank you," she said finally, her voice stronger now. "I don't know what I would have done without you." He nodded, his expression steady. "You don't have to face things alone. Not ever," he replied simply. In the quiet that followed, Maria realized that tonight had been more than just an attack. It had been a reminder of the dangers that existed, yes, but also a reminder that courage could come in many forms. Sometimes, it came in the form of a person willing to step in, to shield another from harm, even when the world seemed harsh and unfair. The sun had almost disappeared behind the horizon now, casting long shadows across the town. Maria knew that the night ahead might still be filled with worry and reflection, but she also knew she had survived something terrible, and she had not faced it entirely alone. And in that quiet moment, with the cowboy standing silently by her side, she began to understand the power of protection, the importance of standing together, and the hope that even in a world filled with cruelty, kindness and bravery could still shine through. The cool evening air settled over the town, bringing a faint breeze that rustled the leaves in the trees. Maria stood quietly outside the small shop where the cowboy had led her. She brushed at the remnants of the garbage from her clothes, but no matter how much she tried, the memory of the attack lingered. Her heart still pounded from the fear, and her hands trembled slightly. Yet beside her, the cowboy remained calm, a quiet presence that gave her courage she didn't know she had. He noticed the way she flinched at every sound and every passing shadow, and he gently said, "Take your time. You're safe now. No one is going to hurt you here." His voice was steady and firm, yet soft enough to feel comforting. Maria nodded, though her throat felt tight, making it hard to speak. She had never met anyone like him, someone who seemed to carry strength not in anger or intimidation, but in calm confidence. As she continued to clean herself up, the cowboy kept watch, scanning the streets to make sure no one from the group that attacked her returned. His gaze was sharp, protective, and full of quiet authority. Maria felt a mixture of relief and curiosity. Who was this man who had appeared seemingly out of nowhere? How could he remain so calm while she had felt so terrified just moments before? Finally, Maria took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Thank you," she said again, her voice stronger now. I don't even know your name." The cowboy smiled faintly. "Call me Jack," he said simply. "And don't worry about what happened. You didn't deserve it. Nobody should ever be treated like that." Maria looked at him, studying his face. There was something honest in his eyes, a sincerity that made her feel she could trust him. She realized that in all the fear and chaos, Jack had remained the one steady thing, the one person who had shown her that not everyone in the world was cruel. For the first time in hours, she felt a small spark of hope. Jack gestured toward the street. "Let's get you somewhere safe. I know a place nearby where you can clean up properly and rest for a while. You shouldn't be walking around alone after what just happened." Maria hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She felt nervous, of course. Trust didn't come easily after such a frightening experience. But something in Jack's demeanor made her feel that this was the right choice. They walked side by side, Maria holding her small grocery bag close to her chest, while Jack kept a steady pace beside her. The streets were quiet, almost eerily so, as if the town itself was holding its breath. Maria's mind kept replaying the attack, the laughter of the teenagers, the sharpness of the cans, the humiliation of being covered in garbage. She shivered slightly, but Jack's presence beside her was grounding, keeping her from feeling completely alone. As they walked, Jack spoke gently, trying to ease her mind. "People can be cruel, yes," he said, "but there are also people who care, who stand up for what's right. Sometimes it takes just one person to make a difference." Maria looked at him, absorbing his words. She realized he was right. Tonight, one person had made a huge difference in her life. One person had shown her that she didn't have to face cruelty alone. They reached a small community center nearby, a simple building with warm lights glowing from the windows. Jack led her inside and spoke briefly with a woman at the front desk, explaining that Maria needed a safe place to clean up and rest. The woman nodded immediately, offering them both smiles of reassurance. Maria felt a sense of relief wash over her. For the first time since the attack began, she felt that she could breathe, that she could relax just a little. Inside, Maria cleaned herself up as best as she could, rinsing off the garbage and wiping the dirt from her clothes. Jack stayed nearby, respectful of her privacy but close enough to ensure her safety. As she worked, she noticed the subtle ways he moved, always alert, always ready to step in if needed but never overbearing. It made her feel protected, and for the first time that evening she allowed herself to feel a sense of comfort. Once she was as clean as she could be, Maria sat down on a simple chair, still holding her bag, her hands resting in her lap. I don't know what I would have done without you," she admitted quietly. Jack nodded, leaning slightly against the wall. "You're stronger than you think," he said, "but even strong people need help sometimes. There's no shame in accepting it." Maria thought about his words. Strength wasn't just about being able to fight back physically or endure hardship silently. It was also about allowing oneself to be supported, to let others help when needed. She realized that tonight, she had learned an important lesson about courage. Not just her own, but the courage of others who choose to stand up and protect. After a few moments of silence, Jack asked gently, "Do you want me to walk you home, or would you like to stay here until things settle down?" Maria considered the question. Walking home still seemed risky, but staying in one place all night wasn't a long-term solution either. Finally, she said, "I think I'd like to go home, but if you're willing to come with me, I'd feel safer." Jack nodded without hesitation. "Of course," he said. "I'll make sure you get there safely." Maria felt gratitude swell in her chest. He wasn't doing this out of obligation. It was clear he genuinely wanted to protect her. As they stepped back outside, the night had grown darker, the stars beginning to twinkle faintly in the sky. The streets were quiet, almost too quiet, and Maria's nerves tingled with the memory of the attack. Jack kept a steady pace beside her, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. Maria noticed how alert he remained, how every sound, every shadow seemed to pass under his careful watch. They moved slowly, taking the safest route home. Along the way, Maria found herself talking, at first in hesitant words, then more freely. She told Jack about her family, her work, and her life on the reservation. He listened without interruption, showing interest and respect in a way that made her feel seen, not as a victim, but as a person. Jack shared some of his own story as well, talking about growing up in the town, learning to ride horses and work on ranches, and always feeling a responsibility to help others when he could. Maria listened, impressed by his humility and the quiet strength that seemed to define him. It was clear he didn't seek recognition or praise. He helped because it was the right thing to do. As they neared her home, Maria began to feel a sense of relief mixed with a lingering sadness. She was grateful to be safe, but she knew the attack would stay with her in memory for a long time. She wondered about the teenagers, about why they had acted with such cruelty, and about how many other people in the town might feel the same way. But for now, she focused on the present, on being safe, on feeling protected, and on the unexpected kindness that had appeared when she needed it most. Finally, they reached her small home, a modest house on the edge of the reservation. The lights from inside glowed warmly, promising comfort and security. Maria turned to Jack, feeling a mix of gratitude and awe. "Thank you," she said again, her voice filled with sincerity. "I don't know what I would have done without you tonight." Jack gave a small nod, a quiet smile playing on his lips. "You did the right thing by staying calm and making it through," he said. "But remember, you don't have to face things alone. If you ever need help, don't hesitate to reach out." Maria felt a sense of hope settle in her chest. She realized that tonight had been more than just a frightening experience. It had been a lesson in courage, trust, and human kindness. Even in a world that could be cruel and unfair, there were people willing to stand up, willing to protect, willing to make a difference. Before leaving, Jack made sure she was safely inside and that her door was secure. He gave her one last reassuring nod. "Take care, Maria," he said. "And remember, strength isn't just about fighting. It's about knowing when to accept help too." As he rode away into the night, Maria watched him disappear, a mixture of gratitude and reflection filling her mind. She felt a new sense of determination rising within her, a determination to face the world with courage, to stand tall despite prejudice, and to never forget the kindness of someone who had appeared when she needed it most. That night, as she sat quietly in her home, Maria thought about the events that had unfolded. She realized that the world was a complex place, filled with both cruelty and kindness, fear and bravery. And she knew, deep in her heart, that while the attack had left scars, The courage and protection she had received would leave a lasting mark as well, a reminder that hope and humanity could shine even in the darkest moments. The next morning, Maria woke to the soft light of the sun filtering through her window. The events of the previous evening still felt like a surreal blur. The memory of being attacked, humiliated, and left vulnerable in the alleyway lingered like a shadow in her mind. But alongside that shadow, there was another, brighter presence, the image of Jack, the cowboy who had appeared just in time to protect her. The memory of his calm, protective stance gave her a strange sense of strength. As she prepared for the day, Maria reflected on the ordeal. She thought about the teenagers, about the fear she had felt, and about how powerless she had felt at the moment. Yet, she also thought about the kindness of Jack and how one person's courage had changed the course of her evening. It was a stark reminder of both the cruelty and the compassion that existed in the world. After a quick breakfast, Maria decided she needed to go back to the alley, not because she wanted to relive the attack, but because she wanted to reclaim that space in her mind. She needed to face the scene of her humiliation, to see it with the strength she now carried, and to remind herself that she had survived. As she walked, she felt a mixture of anxiety and determination. Each step toward the alley brought back fragments of the previous night, the laughter, the cans, the smell of garbage. But this time she held her head high, refusing to let fear dominate her. When she reached the alley, it looked different in the daylight. The shadows were gone, replaced by the clarity of the morning sun. The empty street seemed almost ordinary, as if the previous night's horrors had been a dream. Maria took a deep breath and ran her fingers along the rough brick wall, grounding herself in the present. She realized that fear, while powerful, could not define her life. She had faced it, and she had survived. Word of the attack had already begun to spread throughout the small town. By the time Maria returned home, neighbors and community members had whispered about what had happened. Some expressed sympathy, others curiosity, and a few showed judgment. Maria felt a mix of emotions, disappointment that prejudice still existed, but also hope that her story might inspire change. She knew that sharing her experience could be difficult, but she also realized that it might help others understand the impact of their actions. Throughout the morning, Maria's thoughts kept returning to Jack. She wondered who he was, how he had known to come when she needed help, and why he had chosen to intervene. There was a quiet strength in him, a bravery that didn't seek attention or reward. She found herself feeling grateful but also curious. She wanted to understand the man who had become her protector, even in such a short time. Later that afternoon, Jack stopped by Maria's home to check on her. She was surprised but relieved to see him. He had brought with him a small bottle of water and a warm smile, a simple gesture that meant more than words could express. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice gentle and steady. Maria took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm in his presence. "Better," she replied. "I'm still shaken, but I feel safer knowing you're around." Jack nodded. "You should feel safe," he said. "No one should have to go through what you did, and I'll make sure you don't have to face anything like that alone again." Maria appreciated his words. They weren't empty promises. There was a sincerity in his tone that reassured her. She realized that sometimes protection wasn't just about preventing harm. It was about providing comfort, support, and understanding. As the day went on, Maria began to notice subtle changes in how people treated her. Some neighbors offered kind words and gestures of support. Others avoided her gaze, unsure how to respond to the incident. Maria felt a mixture of relief and sadness. She was grateful for the support, but she also knew that prejudice still lingered in the hearts of many. She realized that her journey toward healing would be ongoing, but she was determined not to let fear control her life. In the evening, Maria and Jack took a walk around the neighborhood. The streets were quiet, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink as the sun set. It was a peaceful moment, a contrast to the chaos of the previous night. They walked side by side, talking quietly about life, community, and the small joys that made each day meaningful. Maria felt a sense of connection with Jack, a bond formed not just through the events of the night, but through shared values of kindness, courage, and respect. During their walk, Maria began to share more about her life, her family, and her experiences as an Apache woman living in the town. Jack listened attentively, never interrupting, never judging. He asked thoughtful questions, showing genuine interest in her story. Maria felt a sense of relief in being heard, in knowing that someone cared enough to truly understand her perspective. It was a feeling she hadn't experienced often, and it strengthened her resolve to move forward. Jack, in turn, shared stories from his own life. He talked about growing up on a ranch, learning the value of hard work, and the importance of standing up for others. He spoke with humility, never boasting, but his words carried a quiet strength that Maria found inspiring. She realized that courage came in many forms, and that standing up for what was right often required both action and heart. As night fell, Maria returned home with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in days. She reflected on the events of the last 24 hours, the fear, the attack, the protection, and the kindness she had received. She realized that while the incident had been traumatic, it had also revealed something profound about humanity. Even in a world where cruelty existed, there were people willing to stand up for others, willing to protect, willing to make a difference. Over the next few days, Maria noticed that the community was beginning to respond to the incident. Some people reached out to offer support, while others began discussing the need for greater awareness and respect. Maria felt a mixture of hope and determination. She knew that change wouldn't happen overnight, but she also understood that speaking out and sharing her experience could be a powerful catalyst. Jack remained a steady presence during this time, checking in on her regularly and offering support when needed. Maria came to rely on his presence, not as a crutch, but as a source of strength and reassurance. She realized that courage was not just about facing danger alone. It was also about accepting help when it was offered, and finding allies who shared a commitment to doing what was right. One afternoon, Maria decided to visit the local community center to speak with some of the staff about the incident. She wanted to ensure that measures were in place to prevent similar attacks in the future, and to share her experience in a way that could educate others. Jack accompanied her, offering quiet support and encouragement. Together, they met with community leaders discussing safety, respect, and the importance of standing up against cruelty. The conversation was productive, and Maria felt a sense of empowerment she hadn't experienced before. She realized that while the attack had been a moment of fear and vulnerability, it had also become a turning point, a chance to advocate for change, to inspire understanding, and to foster a sense of community. Jack's presence reinforced her confidence, showing her that she was not alone in her pursuit of justice and respect. As the sun set on another day, Maria reflected on how far she had come. The memory of the attack still lingered, but it no longer held the same power over her. She had faced fear, received protection, and found courage within herself. She had also discovered the profound impact of kindness and support from others. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of hope, a belief that the world could be better, that people could be kinder, and that even in moments of darkness, there was light to be found. That night, as Maria prepared for bed, she thought about the journey ahead. She knew there would be challenges, moments of doubt, and encounters with prejudice. But she also knew that she had the strength to face them, and that she had allies who would stand beside her. Jack's intervention had not only protected her physically, but it had also given her a renewed sense of courage and purpose. As she drifted off to sleep, Maria felt a sense of gratitude and determination. She knew that the events of the past days would stay with her, but they would not define her. Instead, they would become a source of strength, a reminder of the power of courage, kindness, and human connection. She understood that even in a world that could be cruel, there were moments of hope, moments of protection, and moments of bravery that could change everything. And so, with the memory of Jack's calm, protective presence in her mind, Maria closed her eyes, ready to face whatever came next. She was no longer just a victim of cruelty. She was a woman who had survived, who had received help when needed, and who was determined to make a difference in her community. Days passed since the attack, but Maria's mind never fully rested. Each morning she woke, her thoughts returned to the incident, the fear, the humiliation, and the overwhelming helplessness she had felt. Yet, alongside those memories, a new feeling had begun to grow within her: determination. She realized that what had happened to her could not just fade into silence. She needed to act, not only for herself, but for others who might one day face similar cruelty. The idea of speaking publicly about her experience was both terrifying and empowering. Maria had never been the type to seek attention, and the thought of recounting the painful moments of the attack made her stomach twist. But she also felt a deep sense of responsibility. Silence would only allow the prejudice and ignorance in her town to continue unchecked. If she could share her story, perhaps she could inspire understanding and change. Jack had been a constant presence during these days. He checked on her regularly, offering quiet support and encouragement. "You're stronger than you think," he said one afternoon, as they sat on a bench near the edge of the reservation. "Sharing your story won't be easy, but it will be worth it. People need to hear what you have to say." Maria looked at him, feeling a mixture of gratitude and nerves. I don't know if I can," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. Jack nodded, understanding the weight of her feelings. "It's natural to feel afraid," he said gently. "But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting even when you're scared. And I'll be here every step of the way." His words resonated deeply with Maria. She realized that courage wasn't something she had to find alone. With support and determination, she could face the challenge ahead. After careful thought, Maria decided to speak at a community gathering organized at the local center. It was a modest space, but it was important, a place where people from different backgrounds could come together to talk, learn, and listen. Maria spent hours preparing, writing down her thoughts, and practicing the words she hoped would convey not just the pain she had experienced, but also the resilience she had discovered within herself. On the day of the gathering, Maria felt her nerves prickling like tiny needles across her skin. She had rehearsed her speech countless times, but now, as she stood before the small audience of neighbors and community members, her heart raced. She could feel the weight of their gazes, their curiosity, and perhaps, for some, their judgment. Yet she drew a deep breath and reminded herself why she was there. She wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for dignity, respect, and understanding. Jack sat in the front row, a quiet anchor of support. His presence gave Maria a sense of calm, a reminder that she was not facing this alone. As she began to speak, her voice shook slightly, but she pressed on. She recounted the events of that night, the attack, the humiliation, and the fear. But she also spoke of the kindness she had received, the protection Jack had offered, and the courage she had found within herself. The room was silent as she spoke, the audience listening intently. Some faces reflected shock and sorrow, others curiosity, and a few showed shame for the role prejudice had played in their community. Maria's words painted a vivid picture, not of blame, but of the human impact of cruelty. She emphasized the importance of empathy, respect, and standing up for those who were vulnerable. As she continued, Maria felt a shift within herself. The fear that had gripped her earlier began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of confidence. Speaking aloud, sharing her story, gave her power. She realized that the same courage that had carried her through the alley and into Jack's protection could now carry her through this challenge. She was no longer just a victim. She was an advocate, a voice for change. Jack watched her closely, proud but also deeply respectful. He knew the bravery it took to speak in front of a crowd, to expose one's vulnerabilities, and to face potential judgment. But he also knew the impact her words could have. Maria's story had the power to open hearts, to foster understanding, and to inspire others to act with kindness and courage. When she finished speaking, the room remained silent for a moment, a pause that felt both heavy and significant. Then, one by one, members of the audience began to applaud. Some offered nods of respect, others approached her afterward to express their support and gratitude. Maria felt a mixture of relief and pride. She had faced her fear, and in doing so, she had turned a moment of pain into a moment of empowerment. After the gathering, Maria and Jack walked home together. The streets were calm, the air carrying a soft evening breeze. Maria felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't known before. Sharing her story had been difficult, yes, but it had also been transformative. She realized that courage was not just about facing danger. It was also about standing up for what was right, speaking truth, and inspiring change. Over the next few days, the impact of her speech began to ripple through the community. People who had once whispered behind closed doors now approached Maria with words of support and solidarity. Some community leaders reached out to discuss ways to promote respect and understanding between different groups. Maria felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her voice, once silenced by fear and humiliation, was now a force for positive change. Jack remained a steadfast ally during this time, offering encouragement and practical support. He accompanied her to meetings, helped facilitate conversations, and provided a steady presence whenever she felt uncertain. Maria came to rely on his friendship and guidance, appreciating not just his protection during the attack, but also his unwavering belief in her strength and potential. One afternoon, as they walked together along a quiet street, Maria reflected on how much she had grown. The attack, once a symbol of fear and vulnerability, had become a catalyst for courage and empowerment. She realized that even in moments of darkness, there was the possibility for light, through the actions of others, through personal resilience, and through the choice to turn pain into purpose. Jack spoke quietly as they walked. "You've done something incredible," he said. "Sharing your story, standing up for yourself, and inspiring others, it's not easy, but you've done it with grace and courage." Maria smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "You showed me what it means to be protected, to feel safe, and to have someone believe in you. That made all the difference." Jack shook his head slightly, modestly. "You did all the hard work. I just stood by you. The courage came from you, Maria. Don't forget that." His words were true, and Maria felt a swell of pride. She had faced fear, found her voice, and inspired others. She realized that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about acting despite fear, about standing tall even when the world seemed against you. As the days passed, Maria became more involved in her community. She met with leaders to discuss safety measures, spoke with youth about respect and empathy, and shared her story with anyone willing to listen. Her experiences had given her insight and perspective, and she used them to educate others, to build understanding, and to foster a sense of compassion that had been absent before. Jack continued to support her quietly, never overshadowing her efforts but always present when needed. Their friendship deepened, built on trust, respect, and shared values. Maria realized that true courage often came not from a single heroic act, but from the consistent, quiet support of others who chose to stand beside you when it mattered most. One evening, after a long day of meetings and community work, Maria and Jack sat together on the porch of her home. The sky was painted with the colors of sunset, a reminder of the beauty that still existed in the world despite its challenges. Maria felt a sense of peace, a feeling that she had not known since the night of the attack. She had survived, she had found her voice, and she had begun to make a difference. Jack broke the silence, his voice gentle. "You've inspired a lot of people," he said. "Not just with your story, but with the way you've faced everything that happened to you. You've shown strength, courage, and grace." Maria looked at him, feeling a deep sense of appreciation. "I only hope I can keep making a difference," she replied. "There's still so much work to do, but I feel stronger knowing I'm not alone." Jack nodded, his expression steady and reassuring. "You're never alone," he said, "and you don't have to face the world by yourself. You've proven that courage can change things, and I'll be here whenever you need support." Maria felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of gratitude and hope. She realized that the journey ahead would have challenges, but she also knew that she had allies, courage, and the strength to face whatever came next. That night, as Maria prepared for bed, she reflected on the journey she had taken. From fear and humiliation to courage and advocacy, she had transformed her experience into a force for change. She understood now that even in moments of pain, there was the possibility for growth, empowerment, and connection. And she knew that with allies like Jack, and with her own determination, she could continue to face challenges with strength and resilience. As she closed her eyes, Maria felt a sense of purpose settle over her. She was no longer defined by fear or by the cruelty of others. She was a woman who had survived, who had found her voice, and who was committed to making a difference in her community. And in that moment, she understood that courage, kindness, and the support of others could truly transform even the darkest experiences into a path of hope, healing, and change. Weeks had passed since the attack, and Maria felt a quiet strength settling into her life. The memory of that terrifying night still lingered, but it no longer held the same power over her. She had transformed fear into determination, humiliation into advocacy, and loneliness into connection. Every morning she woke with a sense of purpose, ready to face the challenges ahead and continue her journey of healing. The community had begun to change slowly, influenced by her courage and her willingness to speak openly about her experience. People who had once avoided her now offered words of support, gestures of kindness, and invitations to participate in community events. There was still work to do, and Maria knew that, but she also recognized the significance of each small step forward. Change was happening, and she was a part of it. Jack continued to be a constant presence in her life. His support had never wavered, and it was clear that his care went beyond the actions of that one night. He celebrated her victories quietly, encouraged her when she faced setbacks, and reminded her that she didn't have to carry the weight of the world alone. Maria came to rely on him not as a crutch, but as a steady anchor, a reminder that courage and kindness often came from shared strength. One afternoon, Maria attended a town council meeting with Jack by her side. The agenda included discussions about safety measures and community outreach programs. Maria was nervous but resolute. She had been invited to speak about her experience, to offer suggestions, and to highlight the importance of empathy and respect. As she stood before the council members and townspeople, she felt the familiar mix of fear and determination. But this time, the fear was tempered by confidence. She knew her voice mattered. She began by recounting the attack, focusing not just on the details of what had happened, but on the emotions it had stirred: fear, vulnerability, and humiliation. She spoke about how the support she had received, particularly from Jack, had helped her regain a sense of safety and self-worth. Then she shifted to the lessons she had learned: the importance of standing up for others, fostering empathy, and creating a community where everyone felt valued and respected. Her words resonated deeply with the audience. Some listeners nodded in understanding, others whispered among themselves, and a few even looked visibly moved. Maria felt a surge of pride and relief. Speaking in front of the council was not just about addressing the past, it was about shaping the future. She was turning her painful experience into a force for positive change. After her speech, Several community leaders approached Maria to discuss initiatives to promote awareness and safety. They spoke about educational programs for young people, workshops on respect and inclusion, and strategies to ensure that incidents like hers would be prevented in the future. Maria listened attentively, offering her input and expressing her gratitude for their willingness to listen and act. Jack stayed close throughout the meeting, offering quiet encouragement. When the discussion ended, he turned to Maria and said, "You did an amazing job today. You've turned something very painful into an opportunity for change." Maria smiled, feeling the weight of his words. She realized that the journey she had started months ago was reaching a new level. She was no longer just surviving. She was leading, advocating, and inspiring others. In the following days, Maria continued to engage with her community. She visited schools to speak with young people about respect and kindness, met with local organizations to discuss safety measures, and even started a small support group for anyone who had experienced harassment or prejudice. Each step she took strengthened her confidence and reinforced her sense of purpose. Jack remained a steadfast ally throughout this process. He helped with logistics, offered advice when needed, and most importantly, reminded Maria that she was never alone. Their bond deepened, built on mutual respect, shared values, and the trust that had formed during the night of the attack. Maria realized that their connection was more than friendship. It was a partnership based on courage, support, and the willingness to stand up for what was right. One evening, after a long day of meetings and community work, Maria and Jack sat together on a hill overlooking the town. The sun was setting, casting golden and pink hues across the landscape. Maria felt a sense of calm and fulfillment she had not known for months. The events of that night, the fear and the humiliation seemed distant now, overshadowed by the progress she had made and the positive changes taking place around her. Jack broke the silence. "You've changed a lot since that night," he said gently. "You've faced fear, spoken your truth, and made a real difference in people's lives." Maria nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "You gave me the courage to believe in myself when I felt powerless." Jack shook his head modestly. "You found that courage inside yourself. I just helped you see it. What matters is that you acted, and now you're inspiring others to act too." Maria smiled, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. She understood that courage was not just about confronting danger. It was also about the choices we make every day to do what is right, to support others, and to create a better world. In the following weeks, Maria's advocacy work gained wider recognition. Local media outlets covered her story, focusing on her resilience, her courage, and the positive changes she was fostering in the community. People from neighboring towns reached out to express their support, and some even shared their own experiences of overcoming adversity. Maria felt a deep sense of fulfillment. What had begun as a moment of fear and vulnerability had grown into a movement of awareness, empathy, and action. Despite all the attention and new responsibilities, Maria remained grounded. She continued to work at the diner, interact with her neighbors, and spend time with her family. She understood that real change came from consistent effort, from the small, everyday actions that built trust, understanding, and respect. She also understood the importance of personal healing, of taking time to care for herself and nurture her own strength. Jack remained by her side through all of this. Their bond had grown into something unshakable, rooted in trust, shared experiences, and the understanding that true support often meant being present without judgment or expectation. Maria realized that their connection had transformed her life, giving her both safety and a sense of belonging. She knew that together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. One day, Maria received a letter from a young woman who had heard her story. The letter spoke of fear, isolation, and prejudice, but also of hope inspired by Maria's courage. Reading the words, Maria felt tears welling in her eyes. She realized that her voice, her actions, and her willingness to stand up had touched someone else's life. It was a reminder that even small acts of bravery could ripple outward, creating change far beyond what one person could imagine. That evening, Maria and Jack sat on her porch, watching the stars begin to appear in the night sky. The quiet night was peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos and fear of that fateful night. Maria felt a sense of closure, knowing that she had survived, healed, and grown stronger. She had transformed her experience of fear into one of courage and action, and in doing so, had inspired change in her community. Jack spoke softly. "You've done more than I ever imagined," he said. "You've turned a terrible night into a story of hope, courage, and change. You should be proud of yourself." Maria smiled, feeling the weight of his words and the truth behind them. "I am proud," she replied, "and I'm grateful for your support, for my strength, and for the chance to make a difference." In the weeks that followed, Maria's life settled into a rhythm of purpose and hope. She continued her advocacy work, strengthened her bonds with friends and neighbors, and nurtured the sense of safety and trust she had found with Jack. The town began to reflect these changes as well. People were more aware of their actions, more willing to intervene when they saw injustice, and more open to conversations about respect and empathy. Maria had learned that healing was not just about recovering from fear, but about transforming that fear into action, connection, and change. She had learned that courage was not the absence of vulnerability, but the willingness to act despite it. And she had learned that support, kindness, and human connection could change lives in ways that were profound and lasting. As Maria prepared for bed one night, she reflected on the journey she had taken. From fear and humiliation to courage, advocacy, and hope, she had come a long way. She understood now that her story was not just about survival. It was about the power of standing up, speaking out, and inspiring others. She had turned her darkest moment into a source of light for herself and for her community. And with Jack's unwavering support and the strength she had found within herself, Maria knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she could face them with courage, resilience, and hope. She closed her eyes, feeling a sense of peace and accomplishment. She was no longer defined by fear, nor by the cruelty of others. She was a woman who had survived, grown stronger, and used her experience to make a meaningful difference. And in that she had found true healing, empowerment, and a lasting sense of hope for the future.